Hi folks, welcome to this book club of the Lotus Eaters about one of my favourites, but not one of Callum's favourites, 1984 by George Orwell. This is a kind of addition to the Brave New World book club we did because they deal with basically the same topics of 20th century, early 20th century dystopias. How did you...
View of a dystopia.
Well, the predictive aspect, the fictional dystopias in the future. And we're going to be talking about 1984, talking about the major themes, what's interesting about it, and how it compares with Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And this is important because they were in contact with one another. They there's a dialogue there. And we'll come to the conclusion of which we think is the superior dystopian novel. Okay. So, where should we begin?
So, we're going to go through the let's say, story part of it, and then we'll stop where appropriate, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So, firstly, the book starts with Winston starting his diary. So, he's purchased a diary, and he's going to start it, which is punishable by death for starting a diary. He recalls that he met a girl when he was walking around, the brown-haired girl, as he calls her, and he was simultaneously repulsed and attracted to her, thinking that she was definitely a member of the thought police. So he also talks about O'Brien and the fact that he thinks this chap O'Brien is with him on the side that he hates the party and wants to destroy the party. And he scrolls down in his diary, down with Big Brother, again and again, without really realizing it. And then there's a knock at the door.
Terrifying.
So there's a few things in here. So he mentions different things. I think we should go over them first, just in case someone who hasn't read has joined us. So the introduce to the world of the Tele Screens. So Tele Screens are a thing. Are screens on the wall of whichever room you're in.
Basically like the tyrannical Alexas.
Yeah, in which the party can look through at any moment without you knowing whether they're looking or not, or listening to you or not. There's also Big Brother, who's just this symbol on the wall.
Disembodied head. Yeah,
the head of the party, the center of the party, the stallion of it, except no one ever sees him. There's also Ingsoc, so Ingsoc being English socialism. That's the party. Big Brother is watching you, being everywhere. The slogan, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, being the party slogan. So all of those things. And we'll get into what those are in a minute.
It's all quite classic at this point. Everyone's very familiar with these things now.
Yeah, the Ministry of Truth, whatnot, whatnot. One of the things I did find interesting is the percentage he lives of the party. So the inner party is 2% of the population, outer party 13%, and then the proles make up 85%. I don't know, it just weirded me out, because from looking at other... totalitarian regimes, that doesn't really look the case to me. Like, they try to get more and more people in, but I could be completely wrong. Anyway, that's by the wayside.
Well, I mean, before we go on, I wonder how, if you were to poll people by the question something like, how interested are you in politics? And then, are you a member of a party? Are you an important member of a party? Things like this.
You'd end up with about 2% or something.
You'd end up with probably fairly, similar, like 85% I'm not interested in politics, 13% fairly interested, and then 2% very invested.
I'm trying to think, what is that, 12 million people in the UK? I don't know. Anyway, so the thing here is, after the knock at the door, it turns out it's Mrs. Parsons, or Comrade Parsons, as you're meant to call her. You're not meant to call her Mrs., but... he does. She wants his help with the sink because the sink is blocked, and when he goes over to unblock the sink, the Parsons children are spies, so they're members of the spies, which are children who are workers of the party, and they're insufferable.
Their job is to report any abnormalities to the party from their parents.
Yeah. And Winston says that nearly all children nowadays were horrible. They adopted the party and everything connected with it. Yeah, when you make children into political savages, that's what they're going to be. Because they don't know right from wrong.
Exactly, they don't know any different, and they're told by the authorities, and children are very susceptible to believing whatever an authority figure tells them, which is why they believe in Santa Claus. No, I'm not joking. As a dad, I'm telling you, this is the case. So the
kind of child that turns in his own father for thought crime is called a child hero, and this kind of person is celebrated. Of course, this happened in the real world as well. Winston notes how Parsons' children will eventually turn him in. Yeah. So the Parsons family will eventually be thrown in by their own kids. And he knows that he's also a dead man, Winston, because of a thought crime he's already committed. Eventually, they will figure it out. So then he dreams of the death of his mother and his sister and the fact that they were caught. You remember he was there. He was a brat, stole the chocolate, ran off.
Yeah, because obviously, because they're under a socialist regime, they're going hungry. At some point in Winston's early life, there's like a famine or something like that, as the regime of Ingsoc is being instantiated into reality. It goes through a dreadful famine and wars, and Winston, being a young boy, can't control himself, and so he ends up stealing food for. So just to begin, I actually think that Orwell's a really powerful writer, and I felt that the part where he was feeling guilty about stealing food from his weak and sickly sister, I thought that was actually really powerful, bit of prose, and it really emphasizes the human suffering that one goes through under a socialist regime. And much worse happened in, say, Russia and China, but you can see that he's harking to that. He's saying, look, this is really harsh. It makes people do things they don't want to do.
So he also mentions that the world of Ingsoc, the Oceania, the country he lives in, which is Airstrip 1, the United Kingdom, America, and so on.
The English-speaking world in the Americas.
Yeah, they're an alliance with with Eurasia, so the Russians essentially, and they're at war with East Asia, the Chinese essentially. Yeah. And he also mentions that the party determines the present and the past. So we have always been at war with East Asia and always in alliance with Eurasia
until the party decides otherwise, and then we've always been the opposite. We've always been in an alliance with East Asia or in an alliance with Eurasia and at war with East Asia.
Yeah. So then we go on to Winston's job. So he works at MinTruth, Ministry of Truth, making past documents align with the party truth,
otherwise known as the BBC. Sorry.
So as he changes around, he mentions that the party determines the truth. Well, what if something goes counter to that? Well, that's what the Ministry of Truth does. They replace falsehoods, or they replace the falsehoods with other falsehoods. As in, they'll just make up stories about a thing that happened to try and explain away why someone is suddenly not there.
And he really was talking about the BBC here.
Yeah. So he also mentions that he has had evidence in his life of an alliance with East Asia and war with Eurasia, which is a photograph, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah. This is an obsessive point. He held it in his hand. It did exist. Because what he's describing is gaslighting on an international scale. And to break this, he just knew that there was something there.
So he then goes to the cafeteria after working, and he meets a guy called Sim, who's a friend, colleague, I'm not really sure. Comrade, yeah, who is a pure orthodoxy. And Sim's job is to work on Newspeak, the new way of speaking. And he's writing the Newspeak dictionary, and he's celebrating the fact that the dictionary is going to become much smaller, and also you'll have to redo a lot of slogans. So the fact that you can't say something should, freedom is slavery. When freedom is abolished, the concept, how does that make sense? So everything's going to have to be rewritten in the Newspeak. And he says by 2050, everyone will be fluent in Newspeak. I'm going to replace the language. So they also mentioned something that I think gets overlooked. I've never seen it mentioned wide, but duck speak is a term Winston uses, and it's applied to when it's applied to an opponent, it's abusive, but when it's applied to a comrade, it's praise because you're being orthodoxy. You're being
being orthodox.
Yeah. But he overhears like this guy talking to a woman, and everything that's coming out of his mouth is just pure party propaganda. He's like, that's duck speak. You can just close your ears, and you already know what he said.
You can probably think of a fair few examples of duck speak in your regular life if you have ever been through some kind of diversity training.
Or the NPC meme. IRL.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he also says that listening to Sim, he's so intelligent that it's unquestionable that he will be vaporized because the party does not like people like Sim who are too clever. So the Tele Screens in the cafeteria start blowing off about increased production, and the chocolate rations will be increased to 20 grams a week, when yesterday they said it would be reduced to 20 grams a week. But okay.
Yep.
The new party truth is in. So the brown-haired woman is also staring at him, and Winston is careful not to commit face crime. So by reacting to her staring at him, he doesn't want to give off that he's got any thoughts. So then Winston admits in his diary, going back and writing his diary, he admits that he once used a prostitute because he wanted to have sex, and he's thinking of his wife, who was so orthodox that all life with her was not nice.
Yeah, well, the way he describes his sexual relationship with his wife is really entertaining, because he didn't want to have sex with her. She didn't want to have sex with him, but it was her duty to the party, and so once a week
she would say, she would call it, "It's our duty to the party."
Yeah.
And he was disgusted by this.
Yes.
But he couldn't show it.
Yeah, and even though when he touches her that you can feel the revulsion there, she still goes through with it, silently, because it's her duty to the party.
Yeah, so he admits to breaking the law and going to get a prostitute with the Prole district. So he also then writes that if there is hope, it lies in the Proles, something he obviously doesn't believe later on. Well, even now, to be honest. I don't know if he ever believed it. It's such a weird thing. Yeah.
I guess you've got to have hope somewhere.
Yeah. So it's also some of the weird stuff there. So like the party claims that it's liberated the Proles from the evil capitalists of before. Because back in the day, they used to work in coal mines. They still work in coal mines. Nothing's changed. But also at the same time, we've liberated them as our equals, but they're also our natural inferiors. This weird double think. So he mentions that the thought police will spend most of their time thought policing party members and inner party members. They won't spend much time at all policing the thoughts of the proles. In fact, no attempt is made to even indoctrinate the proles into party ideology. In the phrase used is proles and animals are free. It's not involved in politics, you're not a threat.
Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it? But we'll explain why in a bit.
Yeah. So he also talks about the fact that back in the day, before the Glorious Revolution, there was such things as capitalists being able to go to bed with a prole's wife.
Prima noctis, this is called. This, now, prima noctis, just since we're on the aside, this is one of the accusations that's made in Braveheart, the film Braveheart. None of it's true. The prima noctis seems to be some sort of ahistorical invention.
It's also a historical invention in this universe.
It is.
Like, it doesn't exist, but the party said it did.
Yeah.
And he writes down...
It stigmatizes the people doing it as being violating sacred oaths.
So he writes down the freedom, if it means anything, is freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. If that's true, then all else follows. So if you have the freedom to tell the truth, then you can go somewhere. But if you don't have the freedom to tell the truth... To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.